In this video, we're going to talk about generative AI and what it means for the future of writing. This is going to be a long form video, and I'm going to share some things that I've been thinking about over the last 4 or 5 months. And I hope this will be helpful for some of you who might be a little bit worried about the impact of generative AI apps, AI art apps, AI text apps, and everything in between. And hopefully maybe make some predictions that maybe will be correct about what's coming, and maybe we'll be hilariously wrong. I don't know. But we're going to do a long form video, so feel free to watch. Feel free to watch and listen while you're doing the dishes, chores, or whatever. So I titled this talk, The Writer of the Future in the Age of AI. And everything in here is really just my opinion based on following AI technology over the last 3 or 4 years. I kind of knew that this day was coming, and I've been preparing for it for a while. And it's just some thoughts and some opinions and some predictions that could be right or hilariously wrong. I'm open to both of those things because I think we're living in a new world, and it's normal to feel lots of different emotions right now. I think there are a lot of people who are really concerned about what these generative AI tools mean for the future of writing. There are some people out there who are super gung-ho on what these things mean, and AI can do no wrong. And I think I've kind of oscillated between, being outright terrified and being like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is going to change everything that I do. And some days I'm kind of in the middle. And I think all emotions are valid right now. And I think ultimately it's on us to figure out how we navigate this. But the technology is not going to go away anytime soon. And I think everyone's path is going to be a little bit different. And so I just want to offer some thoughts that I have on things that I've been observing over the past 4 or 5 months, because I do think that there has been a paradigm shift. We are in a new world. Things are not the same as they were since like November 30th. Honestly, it was probably earlier than that. It was like Mid-Journey coming out in like July of 2022 when I first got the sense that things are really, really different than they were. So we're going to have to learn how to navigate that. So I hope that this video will give you some food for thought. So first off, let's talk about what doesn't change in a world of generative AI and where AI is more prolific and kind of ubiquitous than it is today. The first thing is that I think a lot of people focus on capabilities of AI. Oh my gosh, it can do this, it can do that. Oh, it's, you're not going to have to worry about this anymore, and blah, blah, blah. And, this is theft. This is blah, blah. People talk about all sorts of stuff. But I think what they miss is that execution still matters. Writing great stories still matters. And that is the only thing that readers care about. And until AI can write fiction at the level of a best-selling writer, which I think it can, but until that happens, we still got a lot of time. And I'll get into my thoughts around that in the future. But execution still matters, and it will always matter in a world of AI, whether you choose to use tools to write with AI or whether you don't. All right. And I think that is the criteria that readers are going to judge us by. The second thing is that connecting with readers still matters. So in an age of AI, it's going to be really easy to automate everything and make everything really impersonal for the process of efficiency. Right. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, humans want to be humans and people want human interactions. So connecting with your readers is always going to be important, and it's never going to go out of style. So doing things to build your community, your mailing list, a Facebook group, whatever you do, however you choose to do it, don't stop doing that. And in fact, do more of it. And that is going to help you stand out and differentiate yourself in an age of AI. Now, what changes? Well, a lot is going to change, but if I had to distill it down into 3 points that I think are important, are how we write and the tools that we use to write are going to be different. So I'm going to talk about different approaches to AI and writing later in the video. And I've done another video on different AI use cases, and you can watch that to get some ideas if you want. But I think that if you look at the landscape of writing apps today, just take kind of a mental picture of the different apps that people are using to write as of April 5th, 2023. Okay. come back to this video in 5 years, and I think that it will be a completely different landscape. I think that it's not going to be out of the realm of possibility that more people are going to be using Microsoft Word as a writing app, because why wouldn't you, with a tool like Copilot, where it can help you with a lot of things in terms of generating ideas, editing your text, all sorts of things. I think Microsoft Word is going to be an app that more people are talking about in the future, where people don't really talk about it that much today. I also think that something like Copilot is going to exist in other writing apps that we use, whether those are apps that have been born yet or apps that haven't been born yet. And I think that there are some apps that are out there today that may not be with us in a decade because of this technology, because people are going to want AI built into their writing apps. So the tools we use to write and the processes we use to write, I think, are going to change. Now, how we reach readers is also going to change, and I'm gonna spend some time on that later in the presentation. But I do think that readers are going to discover books differently in the future, and that is going to be something that we're going to have to adapt to. And yeah, we'll talk about that later. But those are the things that are going to change. How we operate is going to change, and how readers find books is going to change, which means that we have to change along with readers. Now, AI has some tremendous promise, and there's some amazing things that I think it's going to be able to do. And I want to talk about some problems that I think AI is going to solve once and forever. All right. And some of these might sound strange, but hear me out. Okay. I think that writer's block is not going to exist in an age of AI. Because how can you have writer's block if you've got a tool like ChatGPT right within your writing app that you can click to get instant inspiration? I don't think writer's block is going to exist in the future, at least for those who choose to use AI tools. Now, you might get stuck here and there, but when you get stuck, you've got a Copilot that can help you through whatever problem you're dealing with as the technology evolves. So it might be a bit of a hot take, but I don't think writer's block is going to be something that we're talking about long-term as writers. I think that problem is solved. I also think if you think about language barriers, I think that is going to be a problem that's going to be solved as well. There are millions of writers for whom English is not their first language, who now have the ability to get their books into English. And there are millions of writers like us for whom English, it might be our only language, or now we can translate our books and get those into other countries. And so the promise of being able to sell your books to anyone in the world, I think, will be realized with AI. The translation is getting better and better, and it's getting better at nuance and context. And I think it's possible one day that you can click a button, translate your book into another language, maybe have someone look over it real quick just to make sure you don't embarrass yourself, and then get it out there. And it would be a quality translation. And there are already tools that can kind of do that. So I think that problem is solved. I really do. And I also think that this biohacking is something that we got to talk about. It's not necessarily a problem that we have today, but imagine we're using AI technology in many different ways, and we are integrating technology into our bodies. And I think that trend is going to accelerate. And so things that happen in the medical world could affect us as writers. I mean, imagine you're writing a novel and you've got some sort of, mechanism that tells you, hey, you're tired, stop writing, because when your vitals are this way, you tend to make mistakes, or you tend to make more typos in your work. Or, Michael, it is 2 p.m. This is your optimal writing time based on your historical vitals. You may want to sit down at the computer because your brain is in peak creative mode. Okay. Or if you sit down and write when you're really, really tired, maybe you've got, an app that can help supplement you and backstop you a little bit more, so that it kind of brings you up to your typical baseline. I think there's a lot of really interesting things happening in the medical field that could impact us as writers. Now, editing, I think, this is another thing that might be controversial. I think that the days of having spelling and grammar errors in your work are pretty much gone. or they will be in the future. I don't think typos is something that we're going to worry about. I think that uh, tools like GPT-4 and GPT-3 are quite capable proofreaders. In fact, I've built an app that allows me to catch about 50% more typos than I caught before, and it catches things that Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid don't catch, and they're all bona fide typos and grammatical errors. So if you think about that, if that curve accelerates, there's a day where writers are really not going to have to worry about typos in their work, and that's going to impact editors, right? And I think that proofreaders are probably in the most danger from an editing perspective. I think copywriters will still be fine, but I think that the skills that writers of the future are going to value more in an editor are going to be in skills that only an editor can catch, like continuity problems or consistency problems or issues with, someone saying something that they might not say, that sort of thing. I think that editors who have that skill set are going to be just fine. And I think that editors who cultivate that skill set will probably be okay in a world where they're not going to spend their time on typos. And if they do, it's not going to be very many. So you have a situation where you have writers who, even the worst writers that are terrible spellers or terrible at spelling and grammar, it won't make a difference because, it won't matter because the AIs will be able to help them. I also think that developmental editing gets an overhaul in an age of AI. You guys know how I feel about developmental editing, and I've done a video on it. You can watch it. I'm not going to go into the main reasons, but the nutshell of my issues with developmental editing is that it's just the opinion of one person, right? And that person could be perfectly fine, have perfectly good intentions. I'm not casting aspersions on developmental editors, but I'm just telling it like it is. It's one person's opinion based on a writing structure that may or may not be applicable to your book. And there's a possibility, a very high possibility, that the advice that they give you could be wrong. It could actually be bad for your novel. Now, it could be good for your novel too, but how do you know? You have no objective criteria to know whether somebody's advice is actually good for your novel. That's my point. That's the problem that I have with developmental editing. I think that goes away in a future of AI, because you can have AI that can analyze novels, compare them to other novels, and make some meaningful insights as to why they're different. So right now, GPT-4 can analyze up to 32,000 tokens, which is approximately 25,000 words. So for a 50,000 word novel, that's half a novel. So let's sit on that for a minute. GPT-4 can analyze and understand and summarize half of a novel. And I think we're half a jump away from it being able to analyze a full novel. So it's not inconceivable that GPT-4 or even GPT-5 can analyze 64,000 tokens, all right, or 128,000 tokens, and then you're doing something that's totally different. It can do a lot more than what it can do now, and I think that in the future you can potentially run your novel through an AI that can analyze your story based on other books and things out there, and it can actually give you some hard data about how your book differs from other books that are out there. All right. So imagine being able to say, compare my book to John Grisham's book or whatever. And it'll say, okay, here is the data, here's the analytics. And, there are some apps out there that kind of do that, but I'm talking about this on a turbocharged level. It can even tell you down to the point, yep, maybe you should adjust this scene because this is doesn't quite match what other thrillers in your genre are doing right now, right? Or you've got a character that is a little bit different than what other authors have right now. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a market difference, right? And that character could be like in chapter 87, right? I don't know. Just think about that. So you could potentially use AI to give you some fact-based developmental editing rather than just a gut feel, right? And I think that is a problem that we could potentially solve. All right, so let's talk about cover design. So I think mediocre covers are a thing of the past in the age of AI as well. There are a lot of books out there that have got some ugly covers, and that's just the reality of the world we live in. I think we all commit some ugly covers at some point, and then we learn and we get better, and that's just how it goes. But in the age where you can go to Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or DALL-E, and you can type in what you want, and you can get a beautiful piece of art in just a few seconds, I think that that is a very compelling use case. It won't be, there will be no excuse in the future to have an ugly book cover. The only thing that's missing right now at the time of this video is text work. And tools like Adobe Firefly, I think, are going to solve that problem, because now you can type in words and you can get stylized text. So the day is coming where you will be able to do all of that together and generate a beautiful foreground image with the model that you want, text that is engaging and very good, because there's a lot of covers out there that have beautiful art but terrible text work. That no longer becomes a problem, and you can stylize that text any way you want, and you can output it in a layered Photoshop file, and you can even use it to get back covers and spines as well. All right, that day is coming a lot sooner than I think people realize. So covers, mediocre covers, I think, are a thing of the past. We'll talk about copyright in a minute, but I think the capabilities are going to be there very soon. Now, another thing that is very near and dear to my heart is that you can get more diverse models and settings. So I have a problem where I go to stock photo sites and I have black characters in my stories, and I put black characters on my covers, but I cannot find the right stock model at any of these websites. And if you do, even if you do find one, the model usually doesn't have enough poses. So if you want to go, a book series, like I have a series that, I want it to go on forever, I've got a model that's got maybe 6 or 7 poses at best. And then at that point, I got to make a decision. What do I do with my covers? So in a world of AI art, you don't have that problem anymore. You can generate any model you want in any pose, wearing whatever you want, and you can put them in any position you want. So Midjourney is to the point now where it is generating amazing looking people that you can't honestly tell the difference between a real photo and a human photo, or an AI photo and a human photo. The images are that good right now. They're only going to get better. And so being able to put more diverse people on your covers, I think, is really important for authors like me who are of color, who maybe want that ability. All right. And then knowing whether a cover works, I think, is also a problem that's going to be solved in the future. AI is based on, there's some types of AI that use computer vision, and it can look at your covers and probably be able to break it down and compare your covers to other covers on the market and other books that are similar to yours, and give you some ideas and pointers about why the cover might work, why the cover might not work. And it would give you some potentially hard data that you can use instead of what we're doing right now, which is just a gut feel. And to make it even worse, we're paying several $100s for a cover, not knowing whether it's going to work. And we might be able to get some assistance in that area. So in the future, I don't think authors are going to have any problems with cover design. I think this is a done deal at this point. A few years, come back and tell me if I'm wrong. Now, there's also marketing. All right. So I think the days of copywriting and that being a problem for writers are over. I think there will be no excuse in the future not to have compelling copy that speaks to your readers. And even if you would rather have a root canal than write a book description, there are a lot of authors who are using tools like ChatGPT to help them write book descriptions. And I've heard from some of you who have told me that ChatGPT can write a better book description than you can. All right. And I think that's only going to get better. All right. So copywriting, I think, is something that's going to not be a problem for writers of the future. I also think that book discoverability is going to potentially be solved, and I'll talk about that, as well as the review problem. I think reviews might be irrelevant in the future for reasons that we'll talk about in the future or later in the presentation. All right, there are some unsolved problems that no matter how good the technology gets, I don't think will be solved, at least not right away. And the one problem is productivity. I actually think that this is going to become a liability for us in the future. So like right now, I've built my career on being productive and being prolific. And the reason that I've been able to be successful at that is because I'm competing with other humans, right? But in the future, you can't outwork a machine. Yeah, it's going to generate text faster than you can even think about it, and so that's going to be, I think, a problem. And AI is going to write faster than the fastest writers. All right, you're not going to be able to do anything about that. Um, I also think, though, that we are in a maybe a better position than artists are. So if you think about art right now, you could go to Midjourney and you can type in a prompt, and then in 30 seconds you'll get a beautiful image, and you can save that image or upscale it, then save it, and then go sell it or post it on your social media and get tons of engagement or do whatever you want to do with it. All right. And all of that happened in like less than a minute. All right. Now you might want to take some stuff into Photoshop or whatever, but you don't have to. Okay. Now with a book, even if there was a day where you could click a button and generate an entire book, you can't just go and publish that book. I mean, you could, but most people are not going to want to do that because AI is still going to make mistakes in the future, right? It's not going to be perfect. It will never be perfect. So people are going to have to read what the AI writes. They're going to have to make sure they're not going to embarrass themselves. And that's going to take work. It's going to take editing. So yeah, even if AI can generate an entire book in a click of a button, which I'm not convinced that that's how people are going to write moving forward. But even if it could, I still think you have some logistic problems there, and there's a barrier to entry that we have that artists don't necessarily have. I think that's kind of good for us, honestly. And then mental health is another problem that I think is going to exist. I don't think it's a problem that we're going to solve. Maybe we will, but I think that what it means to be a writer is going to change. And I think some people are going to have a hard time with that. And I think that inevitably some writers will be left behind. And I think we have to think about that and think about how we can support each other during this transformational time. But I just call it out because I think it's an important thing to remember. Now, there's also evil algorithms. So today, you could argue that evil algorithms already exist. I mean, okay, I'm just going to say it. YouTube. I search on YouTube. I log into YouTube and it recommends some strange stuff. YouTube thinks it knows you better than you know yourself, and sometimes it does. And I don't know. I just think we have to be careful to remember that what we see is not always what is best for us. And I think that is going to continue to be true in an age of AI. And we just have to remember that we're in the pilot's seat. It's not the other way around. We shouldn't give all of our autonomy and our control over to algorithms and recommendation engines. All right. I think we have to remember that. That's a problem that's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse, especially when you have data that's concentrated in the hands of a few who have their own agendas. Now, copyright is another important element. Okay. So I have tons and tons of questions about copyright. I think that there are tons of issues that are unresolved with AI art in particular and AI text to a lesser extent. And there's a lot of things we have to figure out. All right. And that is, who owns AI generated work? So if the work is purely generated by an AI, I think the copyright protections are a lot weaker than work that is massaged generated by an AI, but massaged by a human and tweaked. I think that has a little bit stronger copyright protection. And then work that is purely generated by a human probably has the most. I don't know. That's Michael Laron's opinion, but that hasn't been settled by the courts yet. What constitutes access? So if you use an AI art app to generate a piece of art that it looks very suspiciously similar or very close to another artist, and they sue you for copyright infringement, does using an AI art tool constitute access? I don't know. I mean, these are just a lot of legal questions that haven't been solved, and it's going to take a hot minute for those to be solved because our courts don't move very quickly. All right. So our works with components of AI, are those cut off at the kneecaps? So here's another problem. When you use AI in your work, do you own it all? Or are the parts that you used AI for, are those not protected by copyright? All right. How do you prove that you didn't use generative AI if a service like Amazon or somebody claims that you did. All sorts of problems that I think we're going to have to fight. Okay. And these aren't going away anytime soon. So let's talk about some risks with AI. The first is machine drift. That's a term coined by Kevin Roos. He's an author that wrote a great book on AI called Future Proof. I'll drop a link to it in the video description. But it's how we can survive in an age of AI. It's a very insightful book. And what he means by machine drift is giving your life over to algorithms. So letting machines decide what you see, how you see it, what you buy. These are all decisions that I think we readily give away to AI, and he cautions us against that. And that is a real risk in the future because it takes away our autonomy. And I think that that's a problem that we're going to have to deal with. Also, data concentration. I said my piece on that. Data being concentrated in the hands of a few. It's not a good thing, and it's going to continue to be a problem, and it's a risk moving forward. There's also something I call the AI layer. I'm sure that there's probably a more official term for it, but I noticed this when I started using ChatGPT and Bing. I noticed that when you search for something or you ask Bing, for example, a question, it will go off and search the internet for answers to your question, and it will synthesize everything it finds into an answer. And then it'll give you sources that you can click on to go and look up those sources. But I don't think anybody's going to go look at those sources. So what ends up happening is you have a layer, another layer between you and the customer as an author. All right. So I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that readers are going to search for products and books with tools like Bing or ChatGPT integrated into like an Amazon or something like that. And so then the way that they're going to be interacting with you is actually through algorithms and AI assistants, which will make it harder to connect with readers and easier in some respects, but a lot harder. And I think that that's a real risk that we have to be aware of. And then finally, authenticity. What's authentic? What's real in a world where you can generate stuff at the click of a button? So Lord knows there's enough content of me out there on YouTube where, oh man, somebody could make me say something that I didn't say. Well, how do I prove that I didn't say it? All right. And I think that that's a problem. And I think technologies like Web3 and blockchain, I think will help us with those sorts of problems. But authenticity and being able to prove ownership is a real risk and something that we're going to have to deal with in the future. I think that the writers of the future are going to have to be a lot more defensive than they are today in terms of protecting their work and protecting their reputation. So there's a concept that I've thought about called the permanent high tides. When I talk about the permanent high tide, what I really mean is that you've got a level of water right now, and it's going to continue to rise, and it's going to absorb certain types of writers, but it's not going to rise to the point where all of us drown. It's just the tide is going to rise, and then it's going to stay there. All right. So the question is, will you be below the tide? And I actually think that more people than you think will be safe from it. And I think that a lot of people will end up floating in this rather than drowning. So people think that AI is going to come along and just eliminate the writing profession altogether, because what's the point of being a writer when you can click a button and AI can generate compelling text? I just don't think that's true. I think that there are going to be a lot of people who quit because they don't feel like it's worth it. I know that certainly is the case in the AI or the art space right now. There's just a lot of artists that have just said, what's the point? I don't feel that way. I think that people are going to continue to create, and they're going to create because they want to create. And yes, there will be people out there who are using machines and who are doing things that are completely different than how we do them today. But I think at the end of the day, as I said, execution always matters. And I think that AI is not going to eliminate the writing profession. Now, that said, it will eliminate certain writers. And I don't want to mince words here. I think that those writers who are hired to write for other people or organizations that don't have writing skills, I think those writers are in some trouble. So ghostwriting, I think, is probably one of the types of writing that's in the most danger here, because you have a lot of people that hire ghostwriters that can't write themselves. I mean, that's why they hire ghostwriters. Well, now they can go to these generative AI tools, generate text that's good enough, and slap their name on it, and ghostwriters are in some trouble. I think anyone that writes for other people, I think, have to really take a good look at what they write and their value proposition, and probably be a little bit more defensive of this technology, and adapt accordingly. And then those who do not or cannot adapt, I think, are going to perish in the world of AI. So you either adapt or you don't. And I know some people don't like to hear that, and I get it. But we've always had to adapt as writers, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago, 10, 12 years ago, when the advent of self-publishing came along, and we had to adapt and learn how to do things a new way. We're going to continue to have to do that, and that's just how things go. Even if it wasn't AI, we would have to adapt some way, right? So we've got to learn how to use this technology, and as I like to say, we got to learn how to make peace with it. And I say that as somebody who is very optimistic about the technology. I don't think I'm naive about it, but I'm optimistic about it. And I have lots of feelings some days where it's like, holy shit, this is crazy, like, this is a threat. But we got to learn how to use it. We got to learn how to use it. We got to not bury our heads in the sand, because that is the worst thing to do. That is the worst thing to do. So the question is, will you be impacted? Well, I don't know, but I have some ideas. Okay. So if you're a fiction writer, I think that some of the technical constraints I talked about, with just being able to generate an entire book, and then, you've still got to read it and edit it and make changes. I think that's going to continue to be a problem. And I think that's going to be a problem. But I also think it's not, it's going to be a while until AI can write fiction at the level of Stephen King. I don't think it's going to be a long time, but I think we have time. Because if you look at some of the generative AI tools right now, GPT-4, not really writing that good of fiction, honestly. I don't think it is. And I just, that's my opinion. Some people may feel differently about that. You may be able to prompt ChatGPT and GPT-4 to write better, or in the future, you might be able to fine tune like a GPT-4 or GPT-5 based on how to learn fiction a little bit better. There may be services out there. I know that there are some generative AI services that focus strictly on novels. Maybe those will continue to get better. But right now, I think we're a ways away from AI being able to write really, really good, compelling fiction. And I also have some other ideas about why, even if that is the case, I still think we're okay for a little while. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, actually, I'll talk about it now. Readers may not be on board with AI fiction right away. Because if you're a reader, you care about the story, you care about the execution. And if GPT-4 or GPT-5 is not writing fiction on the level of the excellent writers that you already read, it's game over. It's game over. If readers don't accept this technology, it's going to be hard for it to take hold and change things, as transformatively as kind of some people fear. I think it all boils down to readers. I think that if AI can write really good fiction that is indistinguishable from a best-selling author, I think all bets are off and things change. Until it can do that, I don't know. And then even when it can, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if readers are going to accept AI fiction. We'll just have to see. I don't know. Right. And then I also think that more complex genres are probably safer from the high tide. And that is hard sci-fi, epic fantasy, certain types of historical fiction. I think that those are going to be okay. So here's another thing to think about. When AI can write good fiction, there are still some logistic constraints. And I think that those are some opportunities for writers. So imagine somebody that generates a novel with AI. Maybe they don't have the skills to edit that novel. Well, maybe they might hire you because you have experience in that genre and you almost become like an editor and you give your expertise and you use your own AI tools to help you diagnose what some of the problems in the story are, and you help that person figure it out. That could become another income stream where we as writers leverage our expertise, not so much as editors, although it would be like an editing function, but almost as like consultants or subject matter experts to help people who don't have that skill. That could be a thing in the future. Now, if you write nonfiction, will you be impacted? Well, here's the thing, and it's kind of bad news for nonfiction writers, and that's that GPT-3, 3.5, and 4 are already writing very good nonfiction. It is very good. And if you do some additional work in your prompting, it's even better. So that's already here. All right. It's not here for fiction, but it's already here for nonfiction. And I think that the days are numbered for simple nonfiction. There's a lot of people out there that they go off and they Google something and then they write a book based on everything they were able to find easily on Google. Right. You know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of people that do that. I think that's over, right? Because people can get simple information with these AI tools now. I think that at the end of the day, expertise and nuance are going to matter more than ever, because even if AI becomes incredibly intelligent, even if we get, artificial general intelligence, it's not going to replace your nuance and experience. It just doesn't have that, right? And so doubling down on that in your nonfiction, I think, is really important. And if you're not doing it now, double down on it. All right. And I think that memoirs, autobiographies, and some research-based nonfiction, like pop nonfiction, are probably the safest in this. I think that a lot of self-help writers will be in some trouble. So you really have to be able to differentiate yourself and offer books that are solving problems that people can't go off and find the answer to on Google, right? Or you got to be solving a problem in a way that is completely different than what they would find on Google. And you have to do that by leveraging your experience and the nuances in your experience. That's the future to me for nonfiction. And as I said, I think, extreme caution for ghostwriters, especially for nonfiction right now. So the next question is, what happens to readers? Okay. And I know my face is blocking some of this in the purple box, but what it says is execution matters. So go readers, so go writers. All right. So what happens to readers? Well, I find it interesting that Amazon and other retailers have been suspiciously silent during the advent of these large language models. You would think at some point that Amazon would release something like a ChatGPT or some sort of AI infrastructure that makes it easier for customers to find the products and services that they're looking for. It has become a lot harder to find what you're looking for on Amazon lately. And I think that they could benefit from something like that. And I think that that would automatically make it easier for readers to find books that they want. All right. So, Joanna Penn has said this for a long time. I agree that why can't we have the book be the metadata? Why can't places like Amazon just scan your book, analyze your book, and make recommendations to readers based on that, as opposed to keywords and people artificially stuffing their keywords and artificially getting their books into categories where their books don't even fit, right? I think that's the future. All right, that is the future. And that's how I think readers are going to find books. Now, the question is, will readers accept AI-generated books? And as I said, I don't know. So go readers, so go writers. So how do readers find books today? Well, as I said, it's kind of a happy accident that readers find our books today. The entire way that book discoverability is built is it's built on people stumbling across your work. All right. Whether that be through advertising, whether that be through entering keywords, other types of visibility, ways that you can game algorithms or whatever. And, that's just how it goes. But I think tomorrow, when algorithms can scan your books, like I said, we're pretty close to it, them being able to do that now. They can do it for half of your book at least. if you write 50,000 words, I think that algorithms are going to scan your books and they're going to understand what's in them. And that is going to be how we compete. All right. And I think it's going to be much, much harder to compete for readers' attention because of the AI layer that I mentioned. And that just, I think that the days of pay-per-click advertising as we know it are probably pretty numbered, but new forms of pay-per-click advertising, I think, are going to emerge. But I think that readers have to be, I think that readers are going to be more satisfied with the books that these new AI tools recommend them. So it's going to be able to scan your book, and it's going to know books that readers have read in the past, and it's going to know why it is potentially a good fit for them. So imagine a world where readers are only reading books that they love. And I think they're going to be more satisfied with some of these recommendation engines. And that means that reviews kind of become irrelevant if you think about it. Because if readers are reading books that they like 9 out of the 10 times, then, you know, do you really need reviews at that point? I mean, I think we have to use reviews these days as social proof, but I don't know that that's always going to be the case in the future. And that leads me to another question, or another thing that I've been thinking about, is that, you know, retailers as we know them may not exist because many people are probably going to be interacting with book searches and book discoverability through AI assistants. So they'll probably be able to buy books through their AI assistants as well. And so what we know as book retailers today just end up becoming distributors. All right. And maybe you will even be able to sell books directly through AI assistants in the future. And so maybe retailers as we know them won't exist over the next decade or so. So what can we do? All right. What can we do? All right. I got some images here of nerdy people fighting off evil robots. Are the robots going to come get us? I don't think we're living in an age of Skynet. I think that there are things that we can do. And what I'm about to share next is in no particular order, but there's something to think about. And that is keep writing and keep building our community. I think that's the most important thing. Don't get discouraged from all the stuff you're seeing. There are going to be a lot of people that come into the space and, you know, just like with AI art, and there's going to be some polarization, and there's going to be some days where you wonder, why am I even doing this? I think that the writers who don't quit, I think, are going to be fine. Don't let it get to your head. Just keep writing, keep finding ways to use AI, and keep building your community. And I think that you will be just fine. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have to adapt, but writers are people who write, right? I also think we should focus on mastering craft more than we have in the past, because that is going to be really, really important. So the deeper you understand your craft, the better stories you're going to write. The better stories you write, the more you're going to connect with readers. The more you understand craft, AI, when it scans your work, will understand that. And the better of a writer you are, the more likely you probably are to be recommended to other readers. So I think mastering your craft is something that never goes out of style, but I would encourage everybody to think about it a little bit more than you've been thinking about it lately. And if you think about it a lot, well, think about it a little bit more. And I think we also have to expand our skill set. And I think we have to devote at least 10% of our time toward learning new skills. Okay. Now, why do I say 10%? That's an arbitrary number, but I think 10% is an easy number, right? So if you spend an hour every day writing, maybe spend, 10% of that hour, 5 minutes a day, 6 minutes a day, learning something new. All right. It could be watching YouTube videos, reading a book, learning how to use Midjourney. It doesn't matter. But some ideas that I have, and this is just based on my opinion. I think that there are probably some other ones out there as well. Prompting is, I think, going to be an essential skill. Learning how to prompt, whether it be through ChatGPT or through AI art tool like Midjourney or lots of other services that have yet to be born. Prompting, I think, is going to be a critical skill in the future. I also think Python is also important. I don't think people need to become full-on Python programmers. I'm not suggesting that. I think a basic understanding of Python and its capabilities will allow you to utilize a lot of these writing apps in ways that other people might not think about, and that could give you an advantage, make you more efficient, allow you to be able to do things with some of these AI models that other people aren't thinking about. So like right now, I've built an AI app that helps me edit my work, find typos. Okay, that's all it does. It just finds typos, but it finds more typos than I would have found otherwise, right? And I also have another app that I've built that uses the Whisper app to transcribe my text, and I am using that for my nonfiction because I don't have to speak my punctuation. So it allows me to dictate approximately 25 to maybe 30% faster, which allows me to write more books. All right. So there's all sorts of use cases out there. And if you understand the capabilities of Python, you can either do it yourself or better yet, you can hire somebody to help you with these things. But you have to understand the capabilities. All right. And Python is the language in which a lot of these tools are built. And Web3, I think, is also going to be important for authenticity matters, blockchain, understanding how that works, I think is going to be important. It's going to be a critical skill, I think, for writers of the future. And data and analytics. It never goes out of style. Understanding data, and I know a lot of writers don't like to hear that. I know there are some writers who are data geeks, and God bless their hearts, right? And I happen to be one of those people. But I think understanding data and how it works, and understanding that you are a walking bunch of data points. Everything you do generates data, I think is critically important. And people who have that skill will be able to uncover new opportunities in the future, and they'll be able to see things that others can't see. It becomes a superpower. So learning data, I think, is really important. And that doesn't mean learning mathematics. It just means learning how to understand the ins and outs of a spreadsheet, understanding how to look at a piece of data and ask questions of it and get the answer. So moving on, some other things we can do. I think we should adopt AI technology into our processes where it makes sense. Right now, I'm taking somewhat of a conservative approach. I am using a ton of AI tools. I'm experimenting a ton with AI, and I have integrated it into a lot of the things that I do. I'm not using it to write right now, and I'm not yet using AI art on anything that I'm selling commercially, like a book cover, but I'm ready for the day when I can. And I think that's key. So play around with the tech, understand it, understand what some of those legal risks might be. And if you can adopt it in a way that's safe, then seriously think about it. And watch my other video on different AI use cases if you want some ideas. And I also think we should pay attention to macroeconomic trends. I think that there are going to be some external factors that have a big impact on how we operate. All right. So I don't know what those will be, but there's going to be a lot of things happening outside of the publishing community that I think we can bring into the publishing community, or that will come eventually into the publishing community that we'll be able to use. Okay. And I also think paying attention to how traditional publishing reacts to all of this will be very interesting. It'd be very, very interesting. I don't know how they're going to react. I can't help but think that they've got to be having the same kind of conversations that we're having about generative AI. And it's inevitable at some point that, one of the big four, I think it's four now, five, is going to figure this out. And they're going to figure out a way to adopt AI in a way that helps them make money. Because again, remember, I think book discoverability is solved long-term with AI. And if that's the case, then I think publishers can kind of reinvent themselves and do lots of things that they're not doing today and increase their profit margin. That makes it that becomes a challenge for self-published authors because it becomes a lot harder to compete. So I think we should pay attention to what they're doing, and we should also, it's another good reason to adopt AI because it gives us an early advantage, and we can continue to compete. But yeah, I mean, corporations have tons and tons of money, and they can develop tons and tons of things. We don't have tons and tons of money, and our resources are limited. So we've got to be creative and out of the box. And, again, I say, remember, we can't compete with machines. You're never going to be able to outwork these things. It's never going to happen. So as long as you remember that, that's going to be good for your mental health. And don't worry too much about what I like to call the fly by night folks who are going to come into the space. It's kind of like crypto. If you pay attention to crypto over the last few years, there's a ton of people. There were a ton of like writing people that went into crypto, and crypto had a crash recently, and a lot of those people are gone. They're just gone, just disappeared overnight. They moved on to something else. Well, a lot of them moved on to AI. I think AI is super hot right now. It's not going to be hot forever. I think in a few years, there's going to be some sort of crash or some sort of AI winter, and things are going to cool off just a little bit. But before that happens, I think a lot of stuff is going to change. So we have to be ready for it. But I do think that AI is going to have kind of a similar moment that crypto's having right now. It's just a matter of time. I think Microsoft or OpenAI is going to make some sort of mistake, or there's going to be some sort of news item that happens or something that makes people cool off a little bit. It's just kind of inevitable. So don't worry too much about those people is my point. All right. Because they won't be here for long. Now, the other thing that we can do is operate as lean as possible so we can weather hard times. So if hard times do come along, just make sure your expenses are on point. Make sure that you've diversified your income as much as you can, that you're continuing to find new income streams. That is always a sound strategy. And just make sure that you understand your taxes, your tax situation, find ways to cut your expenses where that makes sense, and operate as lean as possible in the good times so that when the bad times come, you can weather them a little bit better than maybe some authors who weren't thinking about that. That's good advice no matter what era you live in. And I also think being an early adopter of blockchain, keeping your eye on that's going to help mitigate some of the problems that are going to come with authenticity. So I would pay very close attention to that. And I think that's going to be very helpful for us in the future. And I think find more ways to inject humanity into your interactions with readers. So here's the danger with all these generative AI tools and just AI tools in general, is that we'll be able to automate pretty much anything we want in the future. And that also includes interactions with readers if you want to. And I don't think that's a good idea. So personally, one of the things that I do is anyone who emails me, if someone emails me as a fan to ask a question or something like that, I'm pretty good about answering just about every email that comes to me. I don't know how long I'll be able to do that, but that's something that not a lot of people do, right? So what are some of the things that you can do that will make your interactions with readers unique? Make them know that they are dealing with a bona fide certified human and not a bot. Okay. So I encourage you to think about that. And there's lots of different things you can do. And readers will remember that, because a lot of people who are using these AI tools probably won't do that. Okay. And then making peace with the tech and make it work for you. You don't have to like it, but we got to figure out our way forward. And I also think we should stay positive. This is not the end of writing. It's probably not the end of most people's careers. We're just going to have to make some changes. And that's just how things go. But I don't think people should be afraid. I don't think you should be worried. If anything, sure, it's normal to have some fear and some doubt and some uncertainty about what could be coming. Lord knows I do. But one thing I do know, as I said before, is that execution matters and that readers want that human connection with readers. And if we stick with that, I think we're going to be just fine. So I want to know from you, what do you think about all the stuff in this video? Is there anything I missed? Anything that's been bothering you? Anything you want to talk about? I think we should have a great conversation in the comments. So all comments are welcome. Just don't be a jerk. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.
Perfect.